Hi there everyone, Lars here with another Owl House review, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And oh boy, the Owl House delivered up another fantastic adventure with their newest episode, The Edge of the World. The episode wherein we thought that we would all finally get some insights into the origins for King. However, we were sadly mistaken, and instead we were delivered a heaping helping of trauma and sadness. But never fear, dear viewers and dear writers out there, this episode was brilliant. And honestly, it gave us a lot to chew, digest, and to try to understand. But never fear, dear viewers and listeners, and all you novice authors out there, this episode was honestly fantastic and really gives us a lot to think on in terms of how the Owl House has paced and organized its story, as well as some really great insights into the world building and the character development for its cast. So real quick, let's just quickly go over the general story of this particular episode. Luz is trying to grapple with all of the insanity that was revealed to us in the episode Hollow Mind, and she is not taking it very well. Like I said in my previous review, I think that Luz never fully internalized the idea that a fellow human could be as evil as Belos is. Furthermore, Belos has taken something that she loves so dearly, magic, the Boiling Isles, and has turned it against her, and he intends to murder a whole lot of people. Furthermore, her encounter with the Collector has really left her shaken because she realizes that this new player on the field is someone not to be trifled with. And I really like that Luz is not taking the Dipper approach, where it's like, maybe I should learn a little bit more about this demon, maybe make a deal if I think that it could help me out, what have you, because I think I might be able to handle it. No, Luz is handling the situation, I think, in a very human, realistic way, where she's just like, I am crushed by these realizations and I need a break, but I can't take a break because Belos is 2 steps ahead and we've got to make up room. We got to make up for lost time. And so she is willing to go on a crazy, bizarre quest to help King discover more about his past. A very convenient tangent for Ida and Lilith, who are trying to get the kids out of the Owl House as they prepare for all-out war with the Emperor and his coven. And for King's part, this is really great that he finally gets to go on this adventure to try to find out about his people, because he's been stewing on this for so long. He's been looking for others just like him. And I really feel like King has kind of been forgotten throughout much of this season. And that's really not a good thing, because King was one of the absolute highlights of season 1. King is a character who brought tons of people to the Owl House. King is a very merchandisable character on top of that. We need more King plushies in this world. And I feel like the Owl House really hasn't given him the attention that he needs in Season 2. But we finally get that as Hooty coughs up a letter that directs King towards his fellow Titan catchers. So Luz, King, and Hooty just book it off to the other side of the Boiling Isles to take a magical portal to yet another carcass where they meet all of King's people. And there we get to see King as we always want him to be. Exuberant, excited, a little bit bashful, and just happy. King deserves all the happiness that one could possibly have on the Boiling Isles. And here he has it amongst his own kind, as they teach him what it's like to be a Titan trapper. And King just really takes to it with all of the athleticism, with the horror, with the killing, and just with all of the crazy artifacts that we see around this island. Meanwhile, Luz and Hooty go to talk to Bill. No, not Bill Cipher, though. There's definitely some similarities between this insane cult leader and our wonderful Dorito overlord. But they go and talk with Bill to find out more about what's going on here and to see if they can recruit the Titan trappers to fight against Belos. What they discover, however, much to their horror, is that this is truly a cult, not a colony of people, but a cult that worships the Collector as the great huntsman and who have been hunting Titans for hundreds of years. And they are desperately searching for the last Titans to snuff out their life in order then to summon the great huntsman once again. And that means that they've just brought King to the worst place possible on this planet, and he is in the middle of a bunch of nut jobs who are willing to murder him and skin him and take off his head in order to wear it. That is extremely dark, and I love it. So, of course, Luz has to try to save King, but not before King is found out by Bill, who tries to have him sacrificially murdered in order to summon the Great Huntsman, the Collector. However, he is stopped by Luz, and Luz, Hooty, and King work together in order to get off the island and break off the magical connection so that way this cult cannot follow them back to the Boiling Isles, thereby hopefully putting the Great Titan Hunt into perpetual limbo so that way it can never be completed and the Collector cannot get his final prize, which is King's head. And so our three friends return to the Boiling Isles, and King has to come to grips with the very real fact that everything that he'd hoped for is just ashes and blood. There's nothing for him left from his old life. It's gone. And that the home that he does actually have is the home at the Owl House with Ida, Hooty, Lilith, and Luz. Now, before I get into the real implications of this episode, I think it's important to point out how the episode ends with the Coven, the Emperor's Coven, surrounding the Owl House, getting ready for all-out battle against the Clawthorn Sisters. This is going to be great! But before I get into that ending, let's talk about the emotional payoff for this episode and why this episode is so crucial and why I think we should have gotten more King episodes earlier in order for this to really hit hard. The emotion within this episode comes from a very real theme within the Owl House that we haven't seen really since season 1. And it is this: found family versus the family that you have. Luz loves her mother. She honestly does. And she wants to go back to Earth. She wants to be with her mother. But she has found another family here on the Boiling Isles. And it's caused a lot of conflict for her. Is there a way to have both? I mean, that seems kind of like the ideal. To have the family that we love, that we are born with, but then also have the family that we have found and that we love just as much. For King is in a situation where he has the found family, but he's looking for the family that he comes from. And what he has discovered is that that family no longer exists. And that clashes with the very real reality that his found family is being torn apart. It's being torn apart by the war with the Emperor, but also Luz is planning on going back home, and there's no guarantee that she can have both worlds in her life, which would mean that King is going to lose a lot of people very important to him, and he's having a really hard time processing that, which is why he's so desperate to find his old family, why he wants to find his own kind. And that is just really, really beautiful right there. King is trying to find out where he belongs in this world. This is a great character arc for King. This is a great adventure for him to go on. King was just such a lovable comedic character in the first season who really had to overcome his selfish tendencies and the likes in order to become a better person. Now that he's in a better position thanks to the ending of season 1, he is now prepared to go on this journey of self-discovery. The only problem with this is that we haven't actually gotten much of this particular journey. We're almost to the end of season 2, and really we've only gotten 2 very strong King-centric episodes and a very rushed King-centric B-plot. As a result of that, King's journey is very undernourished. It's very underrepresented within the story. And so even though this episode hits hard and it's beautiful, it's heartbreaking. It really is. It doesn't hit with the emotional payload that it honestly should, especially for such a beloved and well-established character like King. Again, this comes down to a matter of pacing. And the more I think about season 2, the more I realize once the season is done, I kind of need to go back, rewatch the whole thing, and see if there's something that we can do about the editing and the placement of certain episodes. See if we can't shore some stuff up, trim some stuff, add a few things here and there within the established runtime, so that way a character like King can get the development that he needs for this season. Now, there is, of course, the possibility that they were hoping that they would get a full season 3, so that way they could continue on with this, but this episode makes it very clear that King hasn't come to a crossroads. In fact, it's more like King has come to a dead end, and that it's going to take something really immense to shake that up. This is, honestly, as I said, a very beautiful and very heartbreaking place for his journey to right now come to an end. It's not over just yet, but there's no other way that King can move forward until other matters within the plot are resolved to allow him to go forward. This is one of the difficult things that many writers come across, where you try to balance individual character arcs, character journeys, and character development with the overall events of the plot. It honestly is an incredible juggling act to get so many different things to land right where they need to be in order to let the story continue to flow very well, for you to get plenty of development so you don't get bored throughout the whole thing, and that everything comes to a head at the right moment, that it makes sense, that it is ultimately fulfilling. And I really have to say congratulations to the Owl House for doing overall a very excellent job with all of the different balls, all of the different characters and plot lines that they're juggling. Once again, I just feel like King has, though, been a little bit underrepresented within this season. Now, let's talk about the ending situation that we got right here. This is just a brief moment, but oh my gosh, thank you, Mooring Mark, for coming out with your fantastic comic about Steve coming in to save the day. I really hope that this is canon, because the moment that I saw that, I was like, okay, when I saw this scene, I was like, where on earth are we going to go with this scene? Are we going to have an all-out fight? Are Luz, Hootie, and King going to return to the Owl House and find it just in an absolute heap, not knowing what on earth happened to Ida and Lilith, and then having to go on a quest to find them? That's absolutely thing that could happen. But then I saw that other YouTubers have been pointing out that Steve has been a reoccurring character throughout the series so far, and that Steve seems to have a healthy relationship with Lilith, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could absolutely be a thing. Steve could be one of those characters who is breaking away from the Emperor within the Coven. I mean, he himself even says that he's been regretting his choices. Steve could be the hero that we need, and not the one that we deserve, in order to save the day. I'm really hoping that that ends up being the case, because that would just bring so many things full circle, and it would actually allow us to get to a point where we can meet all of the people who are breaking away from within the Coven and who are getting ready to fight against Bellows. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to theorize this, that Luz, Hootie, and King do return to the Owl House, find it absolutely devastated, and they have to go and try to find out what happened to the sisters. And as they go on this adventure, as they search for clues, of course there's going to be shenanigans and everything like that, but then they discover that they are hiding out with the Resistance, and that it was Steve who helped to save them and brought them to Rain, Darius, and Eberwolf, and that they're all now getting ready to plan the downfall of the Emperor on the Day of Unity. Yes, that is right now my theory, and I'm sticking to it. Now, you might have realized that I haven't really talked much about Luz yet within this video, and that's because Luz really isn't so much the protagonist of this episode, it is King. However, Luz has discovered quite a bit that really isn't very helpful to her in the moment. Instead, it's more like, I've got to save King. However, for us as the audience, Luz has been a vehicle that has allowed us to gain greater insight into what might be happening behind the scenes. So when Luz goes and talks to Bill, there's a couple of things that we should know right here. Bill obviously is desperate to see the Collector. He is desperate to end the hunt and become a Titan Slayer by slaying the final Titan. However, there's some things that Bill says that don't seem to quite add up. Bill says that he saw the last Titan, and that it was its scream, its yell, that made him go mostly deaf. However, that wouldn't really work for King, seeing as King was taken in by Ida after taking him out of the strange child playroom, temple, guardhouse thingy on the far ends of the Boiling Isles. So what that seems to suggest is that there's actually two other Titans running around on the Boiling Isles. King is not the last Titan. He absolutely is not, if we are to take Bill at his word. There's one Titan running around that deafened him, and then there is King. However, Bill would not have known that King was yet to come. He might think that King is that Titan that he tried to kill once before. Or maybe he suddenly realized, oh wait, there is another Titan, and I gotta get rid of him. We don't know yet really what's going on here in Bill's head, other than that Bill is an absolute worshiper of the Collector. And this gives us another great insight into what might be happening right here. I think that the Collector is really playing a lot of different people. I think that the Collector has all of his fingers in all different kinds of pies, working on a much grander scheme than even Emperor Bellows might realize. Now then, I say this because Bill doesn't seem to really care at all about Bellows, and Bellows hasn't gone out of his way to interact with the Titan Trappers either. These two have kind of gone off and done their own things, and while Bellows is working to remove all the magic from the Boiling Isles as per the Collector's instructions, the Collector has also instructed the Titan Trappers to hunt down and slaughter all of the remaining Titans. Now then, why could this be? And this then brings up the fact that the Collector was imprisoned within the head of the Titan whose corpse makes up the Boiling Isles. So, wow. The Collector really does not like Titans. The Collector might also not really like other people's magic. We don't really know. This begins to throw into relief just how very little we know. We saw the Collector show up, we were all wowed and bedazzled by just the sheer amount of personality that the Collector has, and of course we were disturbed by the fact that the Collector is ready to go and commit genocide. But it's clear that the Collector is not just some maniac hell-bent on destruction, but that the Collector is very intelligent, very methodical, and seems to be the one really in control here. We don't yet see his grand plan, but his grand plan is coming together. And the Collector and the Titans were very much once enemies. And so that is why he has got to get rid of him. Exactly why, we don't know. Maybe it has to do with the Scream. Maybe the Scream disrupts the Collector in some kind of way. Or maybe there's another ability to the Titans that we don't yet fully understand. Furthermore, we do know that the Titans' corpses can bring life to this world. And because it seems as though the Collector is bent on destruction, well, if there are Titans still to live, to die, and to birth new life, that would seem to indicate that life can continue to go on here on the Boiling Isles. And that might not be what the Collector is aiming for. The Collector might be aiming for absolute destruction. We don't fully know because we've seen so little of him. And this episode right here kind of casts a little bit into doubt while also casting into relief what we know of the Collector. Furthermore, Luz's adventure throws in some great little Easter eggs for those of you who are looking for the connected cartoon universe right here. So when Luz goes to speak with Bill, we of course get to see all of the different Titan corpses and everything like that. It's incredible how many Titans these folks have killed over the centuries, and it's really, really appalling. The grisly altar that Bill seems to have built for the Collector. But Bill himself seems to have a very storied past. We don't really know anything about Bill other than the fact that he's a fanatical cult leader and that he has eardrums blown out and that he worships the Collector. But Bill seems very purposeful in how he has organized things. And to see all of these other worlds floating around out there, and one world looks very familiar to a world that had been attacked and colonized, or at least been stripped for parts by the Newts from Newtopia, that, well, this seems really interesting right here, especially because we see that these guys, without using glyphs, have a way of using portal magic. So, there is a lot of strange stuff going on right here with this particular cult. It kind of reminds me a little bit from the Cosmere of the different cults that roam around the universe that Brandon Sanderson has written. They have really strange magic, they're for their own ends, and they kind of look down on people from other worlds and other kingdoms, just like how Bill's like, ha, Bellows, I've been around hunting titans longer than he has been emperor, which he's been emperor for 50 years, which means that Bill has seen some things. Again, if he's telling the truth. And we're kind of inclined to believe that he is, simply because he is such a fanatical follower of the Collector, and that it's not so much that he is spouting off lies, but rather that he has consumed a lie and he has patterned his life around that. Now then, this might seem kind of frustrating because we're like, well, then what does all of this mean right here? Are we getting world hopping or not? Well, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. But it's really interesting to pick up on these little clues and to realize that there are powers and creatures and machinations at play that are entirely new to the plot at this point. This story right here and who the Collector might be and what his grand plans are could mean far more than what is just happening on the Boiling Isles. There's a very real possibility that this is meant to get even bigger. And remember, there was supposed to be a full season 3 after this season, and this season is headed straight on to the Day of Unity. So that means that what happens next will follow the consequences of the Day of Unity, whatever they may be, and that is what we're going to see unfold in season 3, such as Disney has shortened it down to. So really, there is a lot going on here with this episode. And with so much going on, what are some things that we as novice writers can really pull out that would make good, concrete advice moving forward in our own crafts? Well, number one, learn how to juggle all of these different plot elements and different character arcs. It does take a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice, and there's no one way to do it. Sometimes a character is absolutely inextricable from the events of the plot. Other times, character arcs are basically the subplots that are playing out that are meant to eventually come to a fulfilling head, either at the great climax or beforehand, to help set us up for what the finale is going to be. So find your own way of being able to juggle all of these different parts. The more you can juggle, the more awesome it's going to be at the end, but also the more difficult it is to write. Another thing, though, is this. Within this juggling act, you have to make sure that you're giving all of your characters and their individual arcs proper time to fully develop. And coming back to my criticism of what has been done with King in the season, is that I don't feel like King has been given enough time to fully develop as a character, especially for what his journey seems to be within season 2. And granted, that's in part because there's all these new characters and all these new things being thrown at us. That's absolutely fine and true, but I still think that there's a way to have better balanced it all. So we'll see what it's like when all of the season has aired and we can look back in retrospect. Another thing I'm going to say is this. It is absolutely fine, and in fact it can be even really, really awesome to introduce third-party players that might not seem like they really belong within the greater story. That's absolutely fine. In fact, that happens to us a whole lot in real life. How many times do you meet people that you're like, wait a second, that's a lot of life that that person has, or that person's really important, or wow, these things that these people did suddenly are now affecting me and I had no idea who on earth they are. Say, that happens to us all the time, and you can easily put that into a story. The one thing, though, is this, is that you can't make them too outlandish. For instance, coming back with Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson has all of these different world-hopping cults and organizations between his various books. However, they only come in for certain moments in time within the story. They never take up too much space. We want to be able to have the core adventure. However, when these guys do show up, they show up to either introduce an important piece of information or to cause the right kind of conflict to put the characters on the right path forward. Within this episode, this weird cult, this cult of Titan catchers, Well, beyond what happens here with King and his own personal journey, these characters and this journey have set it up so that the Owl House is now split, setting us up for what will happen on the Day of Unity. Without this important adventure, we might not be able to actually get the events that will unfold in the upcoming episodes. But my last bit of advice is this. It is absolutely fine for a character's personal journey to, at one point, seemingly end in failure. For King is at a point where he has to accept that there's no way forward for him down the path that he had hoped. His family is gone, and his found family is falling apart. That is a very heartbreaking place for this character to be, and quite honestly, I think it's a good place for King to kind of go, because that will mean, if done well, that the finale for this season will be powerful. Because whatever comes, King's found family will be reaffirmed, and he might be suddenly given a clue that will help him to better understand his past and find his birth family, such as it might be. And that is powerful. It is very powerful to give characters failures in order for them to overcome those failures later on. Many times novice writers don't allow their characters to fail or to experience that kind of failure. And if they do, it's almost resolved in the very next chapter. I've seen it happen so many times, and it gets a little frustrating. It's a little cliche. Let your characters stew a little bit in that sadness, in that defeat. Allow them to come to terms with it before they push forward and finally have their triumph. That makes that winning so much sweeter and so much more earned that it really resonates with the audience. So that's the advice that I have from looking here at this episode, Edge of the World. It was a fantastic adventure. It was a heartbreaking installment within the Owl House, but it was one that was very much needed. And I am so excited to see where things go from here. I am pulling for Steve to be the hero of the day. Woo! So, until we get to the next Owl House episode, if you're looking for more writing advice, please check out our other videos here on YouTube. You can also check out our podcast episodes for Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. We have writing exercises over at our Pinterest page, and we would love for you to interact with us all on our social medias. Everything is down in the description below for links and more, the books that we sell, all that good stuff. So please check it out. And if you like what we do here, please support us by subscribing, clicking the bell icon. We'd really much appreciate it. But otherwise, thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.